Let's just be brutally honest for a second. Think about your typical week. You log off late, you take on those extra projects that nobody else wants. You probably tie a massive part of your personal identity, your actual sense of self-worth, to your job title. You are sacrificing your personal time, your mental peace, and maybe even your health for a corporation, all because you really believe, that eventually they will reward that unwavering loyalty. But if we're being really real here, deep down you feel it, don't you? There's this inescapable anxiety. It's this gnawing sense that despite all your sacrifices, you are entirely expendable. Well, today in this explainer, we're going to confront that workplace anxiety head-on. We're going to look at a cold, deeply liberating truth by diving into the work of the brilliant sociologist Zygmunt Bauman. We are going to explore his view on the absolute illusion of corporate loyalty. And here's the spoiler. Your burnout is not a personal failing. It is a deliberate, structural reality of the modern world.
I want you to really just sit with this question for a moment. Let it sink in. Why are you holding up your end of a contract that the other side tore up years ago? We feel so incredibly guilty when we don't give 110% to our employers. But what if I told you that the fundamental rules of the economic game were secretly changed decades ago and nobody even bothered to inform you? Because that is exactly what happened. You are playing by a rule book that your employer threw into the incinerator long before you ever signed your employment contract.
Section 1. The myth of corporate loyalty. To truly understand why the workplace feels so precarious today, we have to look at a concept Bauman coined called liquid modernity. When you look closely at the structural dynamic, you start to understand a massive paradigm shift. Feeling burnt out, feeling underappreciated, constantly anxious about where your career is going, that is not a personal failure on your part. According to Bauman, it is the exact intended outcome of modern capital. This system is structurally designed to keep you vulnerable. Why? Because your vulnerability is precisely what makes you flexible, cheap, and disposable to them. Bauman explains that modern capital has unilaterally, completely on its own, severed its neutral dependency on labor. They don't need you the way they used to, and they design the system to make sure you know it.
Section 2. The era of heavy modernity. Solid marriages. So, to really grasp this liquid shifting present we live in, we have to take a brief trip back to the solid past. Bauman calls this previous era heavy modernity, or the solid stage of modernity. Think back to the era of the massive Fordist factory. This was a time absolutely obsessed with bulk, with size, with strict physical boundaries. Picture those massive, sprawling brick buildings and the impossibly heavy machinery inside them. Back then, to produce wealth, a company had to build an enormous physical footprint. And here is the absolute secret of that era. Capital and labor were permanently locked together in what felt very much like a traditional marriage. Capital was just as immobilized as the labor it employed. The wealthy owners couldn't just pack up a massive steel mill and move it across the globe overnight. It was physically impossible. Because they were stuck in one place, they had to care, at least in a very practical, self-serving sense, about the workers who lived in the towns surrounding that factory.
The economist Daniel Cohen sums this dynamic up perfectly. He says the invisible chain riveting the workers to their working places and arresting their mobility was the heart of Fordism. This historical arrangement was quite literally a till death us do part marriage of pure necessity. Capital needed a healthy, available workforce right outside the factory gates every single morning. This mutual entrapment, the fact that neither side could easily leave, gave birth to long-term stability. It created predictable career tracks, and it even gave rise to the modern welfare state. Listen, they didn't offer pensions and lifetime employment out of the goodness of their hearts. They offered them because they were physically tethered to you. They had no other choice. So the absolutely crucial point here is the contrast between these two eras. Heavy modernity was defined by hardware, by factories, by long-term marriages between the employer and the employee, and by massive physical bulk. Liquid modernity, on the other hand, is defined by software, by briefcases, by temporary cohabitation, and by incredibly short-term engagements. This shift from heavy industrial hardware to weightless digital software didn't just change how we do our jobs day to day. It fundamentally, permanently broke the mutual dependency between the worker and the company.
Section 3. Capital escapes the absentee landlords.
This brings us to the major turning point in our economic history, the exact moment capital became light. It severed its ties to the ground, and by extension, it severed its ties to you. Bauman refers to the contemporary global elite as the new absentee landlords. Think about it. In the past, rulers and factory owners actually had to govern and manage their territories. They had to be there.
Today's capital, it rules through escape. It rules through complete disengagement and through the absolute avoidance of territorial responsibility. Modern capital no longer needs to build massive, heavy factories to generate billions of dollars. Today, its greatest, most powerful asset is buoyancy. It's the ability to just vanish without a trace the very second a better deal or cheaper labor appears somewhere else on the globe.
Just notice how modern capital travels today. It travels lightly, cabin luggage only, a laptop and a cellular phone. That's the whole shebang. It relies entirely on unilateral disengagement. It thrives on short-term deals. The true managerial genius of today's corporate world isn't building something that lasts forever. It's the disappearing act. It's the ability to expertly avoid commitment. Capital has entirely shed the heavy ballast of labor. It moves across borders with the literal speed of an electronic signal, while leaving local workers totally stranded, physically immobilized, and fully expendable.
Cohen provides another really stark comparison to the old Fordist era. He notes, whoever starts a career in Microsoft has no idea where it is going to end. In the era of heavy modernity, if you started working on the line at Ford, you knew with near certainty you'd likely retire at Ford 30 or 40 years later. Today, the predictable long-term career track is dead and buried. Business organizations today are deliberately, not accidentally, but deliberately, designed to be fluid, fuzzy, and easily dismantled the moment it suits the bottom line.
What we are witnessing is the disembodiment of labor, which augurs the absolute weightlessness of capital. Because companies no longer need your physical body tied to a heavy machine in one specific geographic location, they owe you absolutely zero long-term security. Their profits today come from ideas, from software, and from vast global networks. You are simply a temporary instrument used to facilitate that flow. The moment you aren't the most efficient instrument, you're out.
Section 4. From marriage to cohabitation.
This massive macroeconomic shift alters our everyday on-the-ground reality through a pretty chilling metaphor. Bauman argues that the modern employment contract is no longer a marriage, not even close. It is merely a temporary cohabitation. Commitments of the till death us do part type have become contracts valid only until satisfaction lasts. That is the cold, hard reality of liquid modernity. Your job, your role in the company, your entire livelihood is valid only until further notice. The partnership can and absolutely will be broken unilaterally by the company the very moment they sniff out better value, a slightly cheaper contractor, or an automated software solution that doesn't ask for bathroom breaks. 11. I want you to just let that number sit with you for a second. 11 is the minimum number of times a young worker today can expect to change jobs in their lifetime. And honestly, this pace is only accelerating. The illusion of the golden watch at a retirement party, it's a ghost story. It's a myth we keep telling ourselves just to feel a little bit safe while standing in a haunted house.
To put this into perspective, think of pitching a temporary camping tent right in the middle of a brick office building. This image forces us to seriously reevaluate our emotional investment. Bauman says the modern place of employment is a camping site you visit for a few days. It is not a shared domicile. You have got to stop treating your office like a permanent home that deserves your unwavering, deeply emotional loyalty. Think about it. You wouldn't pour your life savings into renovating a flimsy tent you just rented for the weekend, right? So why on earth are you sacrificing your precious mental health for a corporation that views you as nothing more than a temporary visitor?
Section 5. The elite mercenary mindset.
Okay, we've looked deeply at Bauman's harsh reality of the problem. Now, we absolutely must look at the tactical solution, which is cultivating what we can call an elite mercenary mindset. The core question you have to ask yourself is this: if the system is liquid, why are you still acting solid? This is the ultimate challenge to our outdated sense of victimhood. We have to violently shed our toxic loyalty to corporate structures that view us as nothing more than disposable line items on a spreadsheet. Waiting around for a modern corporation to suddenly remember the old rules of heavy modernity is a guaranteed recipe for heartbreak and severe burnout. You cannot fight the liquid state. You have to adapt to it. Let's dive right into this survival guide, the Mercenary Protocol. First, you must shed your emotional attachment to corporate entities. Stay it with me. A company is not a family. It is an economic vehicle, period. Second, start treating the workplace as a temporary battlefield. You are there to perform a specific mission, not to settle down and build a white picket fence. Third, extract value and constantly hone your personal narrative. Learn the new skills, take advantage of the corporate training, build up your portfolio. You need to leverage the corporate system for your own resources, exactly as the system leverages you for theirs. It's a two-way street. And fourth, stay mobile and always be ready to move. Keep your bags packed, professionally speaking. Never get too comfortable. Just like a captain navigating incredibly violent, unpredictable waves, the people who actually rule this liquid world share specific traits. First, they accept disorientation. They don't fight the chaos. They actually value precariousness because precariousness is what allows for rapid, profitable change. They build looser, highly flexible networks rather than relying on rigid, heavy hierarchies that slow them down. They focus entirely on instant maneuverability. The people at the very, very top of the economic pyramid act exactly like this. They embrace the chaos and they flatly refuse to be tied down by heavy, long-term commitments. You need to start acting like them.
Bauman quotes the scholar Jacques Attali to perfectly describe this new elite. He says, their wealth comes from a portable asset, their knowledge of the laws of the labyrinth. This is absolutely crucial to understand. True modern power isn't about owning the heavy factory anymore. It isn't about sitting in the exact same corner office for 30 years waiting for a pension. True power is about knowing how to navigate the ever-shifting maze. Your power comes directly from your portability.
So the absolute most important takeaway from all of this is this. Your identity, your unique skills, your personal adaptability, these are literally your only permanent assets. Protect them fiercely. In an era of universal flexibility, where everything around you is melting, shifting, and reorganizing on a daily basis, your personal narrative is the only thing you truly own. Do not, under any circumstances, hand the pen over to a middle manager who is probably going to be replaced next year by a cost-saving algorithm anyway.
You have to stop fighting the current. Become the fluid force that shapes its own path. Look, abandoning corporate loyalty is not a tragedy. It really isn't. It is not something to mourn or feel guilty about. Once you actually realize the real rules of the game being played, shedding that heavy, outdated loyalty is the ultimate liberation. It frees up all that wasted mental energy so you can invest it into the one and only enterprise that is 100% guaranteed to be with you for the rest of your life, yourself.
The modern world has completely melted the solid floors we used to confidently stand on. The ground beneath your career is totally liquid now. The game has changed forever. So the only question left to answer is, are you ready to move?